Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee, which is one of 3 area-based planning committees of Dorset Council. Our area of remit covers the previous Purbeck District Council and most of the previous East Dorset District Council areas. For the benefit of the public, I am Councillor Tony Coombs, Chairman of this Area Planning Committee. The officers supporting us today are Liz Adams, Planning Case Officer, Kim Cowell, Principal Planning Officer, Chelsea Gollage, who will be reading out the public representations, Phil Crowther is our legal support, and David Northover is the Committee Support Officer. I'd also like to thank the officers behind the scenes who are making today's virtual meeting possible. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making processes to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and council staff in accordance with the Governor's guidance on social distancing by applying new regulations for holding committee meetings from remote locations. This meeting is being live streamed to the public, and a copy of the recording of the meeting will be available on the website after the meeting. Public participation will take the form of written statements as opposed to public speaking, and they will be read out to the committee. We will be following this morning's agenda as set out in your pack. So, first of all, David Northover, do I have any apologies for absence, please?
No apologies for absence received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So for the benefit of everyone involved, I will do a roll call. So please can you identify that you are here when I call your name? Shane Bartlett.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Alex Brenton. Good morning, Alex. Can you turn your mic on? Alex, good morning. Are you there?
Thought I was unmuted.
Lovely. Morning.
Good morning.
Sherry Brooks.
Present.
Thank you. Robin Cook.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mike Dyer.
Morning, Chairman.
Vera Lizard.
Good morning, Madam Chairman.
Barry Gorringe.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. David Morgan.
Present, Chairman.
David Took.
Present, Chairman.
Bill Trite.
Present, Madam Chairman.
And last but not least, John Worth.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Lovely. Full house. Thank you all very much. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination. Do I have any declarations this morning, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman, from myself, Bill Trite, Swanage Councillor. I've explained why I consider myself predetermined. This is a case which has involved myself for a long time, and I have a particular view in it which is very well known to the local public. Consequently, I consider myself predetermined, and therefore I do not intend to take part in either the debate or the vote on item 5, but I would request permission to speak for 3 minutes in the participation session beforehand. Or sorry, at the actual at item 5.
Thank you. What I will do is, once we have done the public representations, I will then invite you to speak as local member.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is minutes of the last meeting held on the 1st of July. Are members happy to approve them as a true record so that I can sign them as soon as I'm able to get into the offices?
Yes, Chairman.
Is there any dissent?
No, no dissent.
No.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, public participation. Members of the public have been invited to submit written representations limited to 450 words, and these have also been limited to 3 representations against the proposal, 3 in support, which includes the applicant, the town or parish council. Members of Dorset Council who are not members of the committee and who wish to address the committee will be allowed to speak to the committee at that point. All requests have to have been registered with Democratic Services by 8:30 AM on Monday the 27th of July. David Northover, are there any representations from the public that do not relate to matters on the agenda today?
No such representations received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So we will move on to the schedule of applications, and we have one application before us today. Have we had any requests for deferral or withdrawal of this item, please?
Kim Cowell here, Chairman. No, there have been no requests to defer or withdraw the item.
Thank you very much. The background information relating to the planning application before us today has been available for inspection by members prior to the meeting, and that covers consultations, objections, representations, as well as the East Dorset and Purbeck local plans and the council's related policies. For the benefit of the public, I will invite the case officer to introduce their item. Then members of the public, planning agents, applicants, town and parish councils have been invited to make their written submissions, and these will be read out by Chelsea Gollage, who has not been involved with the merits of the application, but only in providing technical support. They will be read out in the following order: public against, public support, applicant or agent, town or parish council, and then any local member participation. Following the public participation section of every item, I will ask officers if there are any salient points that they wish to clarify, and I will then open up the debate for members. In order to run the meeting smoothly, may I request that members of the committee direct any remarks and questions through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. Requests to speak need to be made via the chat facility. Please can you keep your microphones and video on mute when not speaking to maintain quality. At the end of the debate, for transparency, I will take the vote by roll call, and the vote will be recorded in the minutes if 3 or more members make the necessary request. I will also ask members to confirm that they have heard the entire presentation and debate before they cast their vote, as it's important that you've heard the entire case for the application. Due to the technology, there may be a short gap whilst the presentation is loaded. So we will move on to item 5, which is 6/2020-0161, replacement of an existing dwelling with a detached dwelling and to erect an additional detached dwelling adjacent at 1A Battlemead, Swanage. And Liz Adams, you're going to take us through this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This application is for the construction of 2 new 3-bedroom dwellings to replace an existing chalet bungalow at 1A Battlemead, Swanage. The application is before you following referral requests by the Town Council and Councillor Trite. The nominated officer considers that the proposal should be considered by committee due to the finely balanced planning judgments involved. Consultation responses received have been summarised on pages 90 and 91 of the committee agenda. The principal objections relate to anticipated harm to the character of the De Moulin estate due to the size of the plots and position of the properties forward of the established building line, concern about the design, harm to the neighbouring amenity from overshadowing, overbearing and overlooking impacts, and concerns about highway safety. And these issues will be considered during the presentation. So the site is located within Swanage in the Purbeck area. And for those less familiar with Swanage, the station is to the south here, and the site is to the north, in the northern part of Swanage. It lies within the settlement boundary and the Dorset area of outstanding natural beauty. So the site lies south of Battlemead, close to the junction with De Moulin Road. The 2 proposed 3-bedroom dwellings are identified here in red. 1 Battlemead is a chalet dwelling located directly to the west, and a new 2-storey dwelling with room in the roof has been constructed recently to the east. The proposed dwellings would follow the settlement pattern, which is of dwellings facing onto the highway within development block. But objectors to the proposal have raised concerns about the higher density of the development. The rear gardens are approximately 5 metres and 6 metres deep. It's recognised that the two dwellings are in much smaller plots than neighbouring properties, but this is not in itself considered harmful. There is need to consider the impact on the characteristics of the area, and I will comment on this shortly, but first I would like to show you some photographs to provide context. So in this photograph, which was taken while the new build was under construction, we see the existing chalet bungalow, which is proposed for demolition to be replaced by the two dwellings. As you can see, although the front door of 1A faces onto Battlemead, the dwelling is sort of uncharacteristic of the area because it presents to the west rather than to the highway. The clearance of garden vegetation has increased the visual prominence of this dwelling. Photo B shows the parking area to the right of the garage, and you see one Battlemead there. You can see that the area is hard surfaced and any previous vegetation has been removed, so the proposed additional dwelling will not result in harm to biodiversity. Photo C is a view from Demoulen Road looking up Battlemead, so you can see the land levels rise slightly. The new dwelling benefits from the retained hedge to soften the corner. 1A currently screens number 1 Battlemead, which is in there, and number 3 is more prominent, being up the hill slightly and having a tall central projection. This photograph was taken only this morning, so you can see that the scaffolding is now gone and the new build is, if not fully complete, it's getting there. Again, you can see 1A Battlemead here. This is taken looking the other way, sorry about the sunshine there, but just to give you an idea of the relationship with 35 Demoulen Road there and 37 beyond it. So it's proposed that the chalet dwelling, shown here, will be replaced by 2 detached 2-storey dwellings of individual character. To assist in understanding the recent site history, I've just provided some of the block plans. So this in here we see where the approved dwelling has been granted. It's got a garage coming off Demoulen Road. And here we see a previously refused scheme. So here the garages would be removed from the chalet dwelling and a new dwelling placed in there in line with the position of 1A, which is closer to the street scene than the prevailing building line. So this application was refused due to the concerns that officers had about the harm to the townscape. This was on the basis that it would be viewed as a cramped and high density in appearance, that it would fail to sensitively integrate due to its forward positioning and the minimal landscaping. Concerns have been raised by objectors that the current scheme is little different from the previously refused scheme. So here I've shown you the block plan, and you can see here that because the intention was to retain the chalet dwelling, they had proposed that a new drive to serve the chalet dwelling would be put in here, and then in order to achieve one space for a new dwelling, there ended up with an excess of hard surfacing in this area, and also because the additional dwelling would be in line with 1A, the setback wasn't considered to be sufficient, leaving very little room here for any kind of green space. The scheme, as now proposed, is no longer dominated by hard surfacing for parking, and the building line of Unit B steps back, albeit slightly, away from the highway. And although subtle, these changes do have a positive impact on the scheme and are considered to overcome previous concerns about the visual impact of the development. Also because, of course, now we have 2 dwellings instead of retaining the chalet dwelling, which didn't form a positive, make a positive contribution to the street scene. Now, the impact on the townscape and the weight that should be given to it is critical in the determination of this application. So here we see that the site lies within an area identified within the Swanage local plan as an area of distinctive local character. Now, there are 19 separate areas of distinctive character identified in the 2012 Townscape, as you probably know. That's the Townscape Character Assessment of Swanage, I should say. And these are characterised again into 3 broad townscape quality types. Now, the De Moulins estate that you see here is not a critical area, that is an area which is irreplaceable, but it is identified as constant, an area which makes an important contribution to the town. So in this area, changes should avoid loss of overall suburban character. The character is evident in these Google Street View photographs, this one taken along Battlemead looking east towards the application site in the distance, and south here down De Moulins Road. Detached dwellings with regular spacing and building line and a relatively tight grain, often because they're very large dwellings on the plots, provide a consistent street frontage, and they have more spacious rear gardens, albeit that those aren't readily evident. So concerns have been raised by the Town Council and objectors that the proposed higher density development of the 2 dwellings on the site, in addition to that previously approved, would fail to protect and enhance local character. Now, it's understood that the area is the subject of restrictive development covenants that have controlled the building lines and the plot sizes in the past, and may still do. But as you're aware, covenants are a matter of land law rather than planning. And so the attractive suburban character that they have achieved is recognised, and these plots are smaller than those currently in existence, but officers consider that the proposal would in this case enhance the street scene by the introduction of these 2 dwellings that face onto the highway. In terms of the appropriateness of the design, the proposal has worked with the land levels. You see the slope very gentle up here. So Unit A will have a ridge height to match the new dwelling, whilst Unit B has a slightly lower ridge, which is pretty much similar to 1 Battlemead. The use of hips, roofs and the low front eaves of Unit B will also assist in avoiding dominance. And although the dwellings will be forward of 1 Battlemead, as we've already said, it was not anticipated that they will appear cramped or incongruous within the street scene. So as identified in policy STCD and highlighted by objectors, the character of the area in this area to the north and south of Beach Gardens includes reasonably generous plots. But having carefully considered the proposal, your officers are of a view that the limited depth of the plots will not be readily evident within the street scene, so as to result in harm. And this is similar to the conclusion recently reached by the planning inspector when considering a proposed bungalow at 61 Rabbling Road, Swanage, referred to in the report at paragraph 5.15. Now, although that development is a very different proposal to the consideration to the current one under consideration, the way that the inspector considered the impacts of higher density development on the perceived building density remains relevant. The 2 proposed dwellings will maintain regular spacing of detached properties, and they are not of excessive size, and they are of individual design. They follow the step back from the siting of the current dwelling, and they will not change the perception of building density and will provide a more attractive frontage than the existing chalet dwelling. So overall, it's considered that in relation to townscape, the development will not harm the special character of the area, and the impacts of reduced spaciousness are insufficient to outweigh the benefit of achieving an additional dwelling in this sustainable location within the settlement. Also on this slide, we can see the new vehicular access to be provided. Each plot is to benefit from 2 off-road car parking spaces. At 2.8 metres wide, the driveways are sufficient to accommodate most modern cars. Objectors have raised concerns about visibility and highway safety, but the council's highway engineer, who's familiar with Swanage and has visited the site, is confident that the adjacent footway visibility is acceptable. There are marked parking bays that we saw in that photo earlier to the north side of the road, and similar drive accesses along the street with no recorded injury accidents for the least the last 5 years in Battlemead. So it would not be reasonable to require visitor parking spaces in this part of the town, which is well served by car parks and on-road parking bays, and there's no highway objections to the proposal. I think it's worth mentioning at this point, policy H14 of the emerging Purbeck local plan Members will be aware that policy H14 seeks to prevent the use of new dwellings within the OMB, like this site, as second homes. And the Town Council has requested that should permission be granted, then a restrictive condition should be imposed. The site is within the OMB, but because the scheme involves replacement development, your spatial planning team have advised that policy H14 is not yet at a stage where there's sufficient clarity for it to be given weight. This is because the inspector was not persuaded that it was necessary, reasonable or proportionate to subject replacement dwellings to the policy, and she therefore requested that further amendments are made to the suggested main modification. In these circumstances, there remains therefore uncertainty in the application of the policy where replacement dwellings are proposed, as in this case. It will be necessary for the final text of the policy to be agreed with the inspector prior to consultation, which could result in further objections that will need to be considered. In these circumstances, following the direction of paragraph 48 of the MPPF about the weight that can be given to emerging plans, policy H14 does not carry sufficient weight to apply to this application. And so a condition restricting the use of the properties is not proposed. Turning to the internal layout of the properties, we see here plot A, a detached 3-bedroom dwelling. The first floor arrangement has been amended in response to officer advice on the scheme to ensure there are no habitable bedroom windows at first floor level to the rear. This is an improvement on the existing position, which you'll see shortly, where there's a large rear-facing bedroom window that directly overlooks the immediate rear amenity space of number 35 to the south. So the only rear first floor window is for bathroom, and condition 10 is proposed to require that this be obscure glazed to protect the occupant's amenity. Bedroom 2 of this property is served by a corner window, you see here at the front, here, which is set back in the plot. This has been considered carefully, and although it is on the western elevation, approximately 3 metres from Unit B, it is considered that it will provide adequate light to serve future occupiers. Were amendments to be submitted proposing a modest rear window, say in bedroom 2, then this would be unlikely to result in greater level of overlooking than currently exists, albeit that it would be 3 metres close to the boundary with number 35. But obviously that isn't before you today. Plot B has two first floor windows in the east elevation facing Unit A, and these will need to be obscure glazed, which is proposed condition 11, to avoid mutual overlooking. One serves the bathroom or an ensuite, and another is a secondary room. You can see that the main outlook for that bedroom would be out the front there. The applicant's also chosen to install obscure glazed window in bedroom 3. This is on the basis that it will ameliorate neighbour concerns about potential overlooking of gardens. The intention is that it should be obscure glazed up to a height of 1.7 metres, thereby giving a little bit of outlook at the top for future occupants. There's also this small window here to add additional light and outlook. It's judged on the basis of recent appeal decisions and having considered it carefully, that the windows as proposed would provide satisfactory living conditions for future occupiers. But it's not considered that an obscure glazing condition would meet the test of necessity in this instance. Here I've superimposed the first floor of each dwelling onto the block plan. So this might not be 100% accurate, but it demonstrates the relationship of bedroom 3 here to the neighbouring properties. The measurements are approximate, but the window is set sufficiently into the plot, so it would only directly overlook the rear garden of 33 here, sorry, and 35. The level of oblique overlooking of 1 Battlemead and of 35 de Moulin Road is not unusual in this urban area, and is not considered likely to result in significant harm to amenity. And as you can see from this photo, this is the existing chalet bungalow at 1 Battlemead, which will be demolished as part of the application. The condition is proposed to remove permitted development rights for additional windows to the rear of units A and B, although as already explained, should an application come in for a window in this position, it is clear that the degree of harm, providing it was a modest in size, would not be greater than the existing relationship with number 35 here. You can see 35 here, and there's a conservatory on the back here. So the proposal currently limits the first floor rear windows, as we've said, to a bathroom here, and an obscure glazed window here. Oh, yeah, that's what I've done here. Sorry, I've just added in here the dotted line to show where this window is approximately in the site, so you can see the difference. So that's the current overlooking. So 3 meters further forward in order to, for the bathroom window there. This photo was taken looking over the back towards number 37 De Moulin Road. Both properties have 5 metre eaves heights, the rear, but their positioning to the north of 35 and to the east of number 1 is not considered likely to result in any significant overshadowing, and the separation distances are sufficient to avoid harmful overbearing impact. Overall, therefore, while slightly contrived in layout, internal that is, it is judged that the proposal has achieved the necessary balance between protecting neighbouring amenity and the amenity of future occupiers, particularly taking into consideration the existing situation. In summary, the principle of development is acceptable because the site lies within the urban settlement. In relation to policy 814, there's currently insufficient weight to be able to use this policy or apply it to any permission. In relation to the layout, scale and design, no harm is anticipated to the Dorset AONB. The layout, scale, design and impact is considered to be acceptable. A condition relating to materials is proposed. In relation to neighbouring amenity, this is acceptable, subject to the conditions relating to obscure glazing of the side windows and the rear bathroom windows. The biodiversity impacts are acceptable due to the current state of the site. In terms of flood risk, we've suggested a condition to secure appropriate drainage. And in terms of highway impacts, these are acceptable, subject to conditions to secure the parking as proposed. Overall, therefore, your officer recommendation is one of approval, and the conditions are set out in part 17 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Liz. I'm now going to move on to representations from the public. I have 3 objections and also a statement from on behalf of the applicant. So, Chelsea Gollage, can you take us through the public representations, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The first comment is from Nick Wood. This proposed development has caused significant stress and mental turmoil to many of my retired neighbours, some of which could be regarded as vulnerable. It has also caused significant negative comment amongst many in the local De Moulin Trust area, where the characteristics of reasonably sized front and back gardens prevail, allowing people views from their gardens and houses of the area of outstanding natural beauty that we live in. It is why it is an area of distinctive local character in the Swanage Town Plan. I strongly feel that with the restrictive covenants governing the development of the area, now managed by Swanage Town Council through the De Moulin Trust, plus the characteristics of the area should prevent this development. The developer first severed the site. We felt this was a good development, though we're not concerned not enough garden had been allowed for a house of this size and therefore out of keeping with the characteristics of the area. Neighbours were assured by the developer that the original chalet bungalow, sited well away from surrounding boundaries, would be just refurbished. Over Christmas 2019, application 6/2019-0702 was submitted for the original bungalow to be demolished on this now halved plot and 2 detached 2-storey tall houses with very limited outside space to be built in its place. This development was rejected, and many in the area breathed a sigh of relief and stress levels reduced. However, at lockdown, we were then hit by this new proposal. Again, wonderful timing. It is not significantly different, but very surprisingly, the officers are now recommending acceptance. The proposed overdevelopment of the site is still there. The massing of these 2 detached houses is visible from our garden and is extremely large compared to the current low-level chalet bungalow, and the effect on the neighbouring properties will be negative in terms of their enjoyment on their own properties, massing, noise levels from intensity of use, parking, amenity, street scene, and their views of either the sea or Ballard Down will disappear. We urge the committee to reject this development. In a country that has just been through a lockdown with many people valuing their private outside space, properties should be built with a decent amount of garden. Only 6% of the UK is developed. Why shove everyone into a smaller and smaller space? It is perhaps the thing that most highlights inequality between people. People move to this part of Swanage for the garden and more open spaces between properties. Please do not allow this development to go ahead and set a dangerous precedent for other sites in the area. The next comment is from Michael Campbell. Application 6/2019-0702 was refused and the reasons given remain valid for this current application. We are perplexed why it has become in the balance given little has changed. Reasons for objection are overdevelopment. The builder wants to replace one building with insufficient amenity space and overcrowding. The 2-floored 3-bedroom house built has already been extended to 3 floors and 4 bedrooms. This proposal is totally out of character with the street scene in Battlemead. Battlemead is a mixed development of detached properties with garages, driveways and substantial rear and front gardens. This proposal does not adhere to any of these characteristics and will set a dangerous precedent within this area of distinctive local character. We quote from the case officer's reasons for refusal on the previous application. Cramped and high density in appearance on a smaller constrained infill plot to the detriment of the distinctive regular and low density pattern of the townscape character in the area. We urge you to refer to the officer's previous refusal. Her reasons remain equally valid for this application. Overlooking. The proposed houses will overlook their neighbours at 35 and 39 Demalham Road and 1 Battlemead. Opaque, non-opening windows in principal bedrooms indicates the builder is aware of the intrusive design and seeks to remedy this with an unsatisfactory solution. Future occupiers will seek to replace them to provide light and ventilation, causing stress and discord with neighbours. This proposal for 2 tall houses so close to the boundaries goes against European law entitling neighbours to privacy. The Demalham Estate. This is a special, carefully preserved part of Swanage with a unique character to which many restrictive covenants and conditions were attached to protect the area. Again we quote, the proposal does not maintain the prevailing character and settling of the area and is therefore contrary to the National Planning Policy Framework. Dorset Parking Standards. The original property is a 2-bedroom chalet bungalow and had 2 single garages and 2 parking spaces, a ratio of 2 bedrooms to provision for 4 vehicles. Now this proposal is for 3 houses with 10 bedrooms with 1 single garage, 2 parking spaces for the existing house, and 4 extremely cramped parking spaces for the development, a ratio of 10 bedrooms and dubious in dimensions provision for 7 vehicles. This is not in line with Dorset Parking Standard as there is no provision for visitor parking. We can see no improvement to the previous application 6/2019-0702 or in the amendments to this application and therefore object to this application and request it be declined. The next is from Stuart and Susan McMillan Pratt. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen the submissions of various neighbours to the committee regarding this application and those previously associated with it. We fully endorse the points they make and so do not propose yet further repetition. Instead, we wish to draw your attention to the background of the Demalham Estate DME, of which Battlemead is a part, and to highlight to you why it is important that you do not allow development which could open the floodgates to the eventual destruction of this area of distinctive local character. The DME is a 90-year-old concept and was designed to ensure that the expansion to the north of the town was accomplished in a controlled manner under the guidance of trustees, currently Swanage Town Council. Aerial photos dated 1935 and 1937, which were attached as part of our earlier submissions opposing this development, clearly show that the estate was to be laid out in an orderly and formal manner. The houses, albeit of varied design, were to be detached, have good separation, be of modest size and surrounded by good-sized gardens. The building line was clearly defined. The houses were to be set back from the pavement such that they would be fronted by relatively large gardens and thus create spacious, uncluttered feel of the estate as a whole. Virtually without exception, 100 or so buildings on the estate conform to these requirements, and there is evidence that caveats specifying these requirements are contained in the land registry documents of some houses, including ours. A review via Google Earth will confirm the current spaciousness of the estate. The proposed development puts 3 houses and a detached garage onto a plot designed for 1 decent-sized house and good-sized garden. The building lines are being completely ignored. The proposed back gardens have been described by local estate agents as compact patio gardens or totally out of keeping with the area. The car parking arrangements will only work if the vehicles are small. The passenger has already got out and the driver is fairly agile. And then there's the real issue of road and pedestrian safety when sight lines are poor. We question whether the highways engineer has actually seen the site, especially when the on-road parking is jammed with holidaymakers, not the visitors to the new houses who will be lucky to find anywhere to park at peak times. Para 195 of the Swanage Local Plan states that the areas of distinctive local character include a variety of townscape character types, and new development should protect and enhance the distinctive local character of the area. The SLP goes on to say that it is important that new development does not reduce the spacious character of the area. Elsewhere, we find that officers should not rely on windfall developments to meet overall new build objectives of the PLP1 SE Dorset. We urge you to reject this application. The next statement is from Malcolm Brown, the agent. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I commend to you your officer's report. This proposal is entirely different to the previous application, 6/2019-0702. Further pre-application advice was sought from the plan officer. The advice states, the 2 detached dwellings are modest in size, 3-bed, and of an acceptable height, scale and mass in relation to surrounding properties and the street scene. The traditional but varied design is considered to be acceptable. The dwellings sit comfortably within the plot. There is therefore no conflict with the local character and the pattern of development. The advice continues, subject to suitable modification, this option could be supported in terms of impact on neighbouring properties and future occupiers of the proposed dwellings. The applicant took that advice on board and the application incorporates those modifications. Your officers accept there is not an unacceptable overlooking and loss of privacy to neighbours. The car parking provision is in accordance with your standards. There is no loss of green space. In addition to the existing dwelling house, there are 2 existing garages, an outbuilding and a conservatory and hard standing. The existing site coverage is 141 square metres. The proposed site coverage is 135 square metres. There is therefore a small reduction in site cover and no loss of green space. The officer's report refers you to a recent appeal decision in relation to subdivision of a lengthy rear garden at 61 Rablin Road, Swanage, which was allowed. I need to draw your attention also to an approval by this authority as recently as May this year at 3 Demowlin Road. Planning was granted to build 4 3-storey houses. The houses are detached of contemporary design to appear as 2 blocks. They replace a single-storey dwelling in a verdant setting. The approval will see the 4 houses built with no back gardens whatsoever and a 3-storey elevation about 5 metres from the side boundary of number 1A Rablin Road and its back garden. The benefit of the provision of homes to be used as the person's sole or principal residence was considered to outweigh the loss to the non-designated heritage asset. Contrast the proposal before you today that with an approval. This proposal fits comfortably within the street scene, retains a reasonable amount of green space and is sustainable in terms of the National Plan and Policy Framework. There is no suggestion in the pre-application advice that decision would be finally balanced. It is in accordance with the local plan. That's all the comments. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. Brilliantly done as usual. Right, I
Thank
have one of the 2 local members who wishes to speak to us, and that is Bill Trite, who's a member of the committee. He has already given a declaration of interest that he does have a predetermination. So once he has said his piece, he will then sit out the remainder of the debate on this item with his microphone and video off, as though he were a member of the public just listening in, and will take no further part in the debate after he's had his 3 minutes of fame. So, Bill, if you are ready.
Thank you, Chairman.
The time starts now.
Thank you. I regret that my summary paper wasn't circulated until yesterday, so if I may, I'll just run over a few points from it. This really is a very important planning issue for Swanage with potentially very unfortunate consequences. Although the Swanage's Demowlin estate has more houses than were first envisaged, there has until now been an open, quite spacious, low-density character to the Battlemead part of it. Houses are well spaced and set in ample plots with adequate front gardens and larger rear ones. For literally decades, local town, district and county councillors have sought to protect and conserve these enduring characteristics in this designated area of distinctive local character in the AONB. These proposals clash head-on with those qualities and are completely out of character with the area. Density is ultra high for a low density townscape. It's serious overdevelopment for the site, and massing means much overlooking of nearby properties. There's a clear visual unconformity with the neatness of the rest of Battlemead and nearby streets, and the need for opaque glass and non-opening windows to remedy overlooking reflects an overbearing design and implies, frankly, that buildings will be far too close to each other in the first place. Parking on site is insufficient for the number of occupiers, let alone visitors, so even more pressure will go on the already congested local roads, especially in summer. And there's a clear loss of green space and wildlife habitat, which contradicts the council's stated objectives. The report refers to the inspector's remarks in a recent planning appeal in Rabbling Road, Swanage, but Rabbling Road and its neighbourhood are quite dissimilar to the Battlemead area. The layout of housing there, the pattern of streets, the physical nature of the houses and gardens, the many blocks of flats and the traffic are all different, which would not be lost on an inspector in Battlemead. Like others, I simply cannot find the significant revisions in this application to address the reasons why the former application was unacceptable. With the best will in the world, they are only very minor amendments. The adverse remarks made by officers about the earlier application are just as relevant and just as valid for the present one. So it is illogical and not reasonable to read that the amended plans are somehow now acceptable when the earlier ones were not. And finally, Madam Chairman, if I may, a quick point, I do really think that a committee site visit is necessary to appreciate fully why these proposals are quite wrong in this location. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. I will ask the officers if there is any response to any of the public representations that you wish to comment on, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that most of the points are probably covered in the report, rather my presentation. Officers have recognised that Demoulam has an open, spacious character, but have, for the reasons already provided, considered that the perception of harm and the impact that will be had on the townscape in this case will not result in the negative impacts that the previous application would have resulted in. In terms of loss of green space, I can understand that because the site was previously well vegetated and did contribute to maybe a more green character, that this is of concern. But we saw in the photographs that there is opportunity for some new landscaping, which is not available with the current arrangement with the chalet bungalow and the parking adjacent to it. In terms of parking being insufficient, your officers and the highway officers are satisfied that the 2 parking spaces off-road for each dwelling are sufficiently in line with guidance that that harm could not be sort of justified in terms of a reason for refusal. So yes, there is non-conformity in terms of the size of the plots, but your officers are do not consider that the harm arising would justify a refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Given that Bill is also a member of the committee, although he is predetermined on this occasion, and he's mentioned a site visit, can I ask Phil Crowther to give us some guidance on where we stand with site visits under the current pandemic rules, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The guidance that we have at the moment is from the Planning Advisory Service and Local Government Association, which is that site visits are not appropriate at the current time for and wouldn't be in accordance with the government's guidance on social distancing, and that's a view that officers also take. If members were to request a site visit, what we'd suggest as an alternative rather than a physical site visit in the traditional sense would be that an officer would go out on site and take a video which would then be shown to members, having ascertained those particular features which members wish to see, and of course subject to obtaining necessary landowner consents if needed, and observing the social distancing rules. Members could of course individually visit the site themselves. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So members, just tuck that away and we will move on. My first speaker is Councillor David Took. Morning, David.
Morning, Chair. I'm not sure if this is entirely relevant, but I'm curious about the history of this plot. Looking at the plans, it appears that it belongs more to Demarlham Road than to Battlemead, and indeed one Battlemead being some way down it might support that. What was on this site previously, and was it ever Demarlham Road rather than Battlemead, and under what circumstances did that change and we get some what both look like fairly new buildings there instead? There's clearly some history there, and I'd like to see the bigger picture here. The plans that we're looking at concentrate naturally on the site itself, but I haven't seen any plans that show the site in relation to a longer stretch of Demarlham Road and the other side of Battlemead. Is that possible? Thank you.
Can you advise with some of the other slides that you had earlier?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if my slides are showing.
They are. We have slide 14 at the moment.
Thank you. I'm just thinking whether I've got. We've got. I don't know if we can zoom in here a minute. That is obviously only the Ordnance Survey, so it's not particularly helpful maybe. This is Battlemead here, and you can see the Moulin. So there was established building lines along the Moulin and Battlemead. I think other objectors have referred to this site as being more naturally related to Demarlham Road, but that is not as we find it right now, and we have to make a decision based on the current situation, which is that we have a dwelling obviously now built, which follows this building line of Demarlham Road, although it faces onto Battlemead, and we're left with this shallow bungalow, which is a little bit of an anomaly maybe in the street scene. I'm not sure if that helps.
David, does that answer your question?
To a degree. It strikes me that the planning permission of the original chalet bungalow might have been mistaken, but that's not really relevant to where we are today. But I'm concerned about the impact on the building line, the street scene, and indeed the parking. So I'm reserving judgment for a little while longer on this one, I think. Thank you, though.
That's fine. Thank you very much. My next speaker is Cherry Brooks.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got one question and then a few comments, if that's okay. The question is, in our design policy for Purbeck District Council, which I think still stands until we have a new Dorset Council local plan, did we have a minimum 20 metres visibility from window to the next door property. I think we did, and at one point I think one of these is at 3 metres. So could I have some clarification on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor. We have design guidance. The design guidance suggests that, yes, ideally you'd have 21 metre window to window separation distance. If I just go, let's see if I can move on to the slide that shows here. So in this case, yes, we've got 3 metres between these two, which is why this ensuite bathroom window is to be obscure glazed, and this secondary bedroom window is to provide light rather than outlook, really, is to be obscure glazed. This window here is the primary window for the bedroom, so it would be opaque. Sorry, you should be able to see through it.
Okay, thank you. Can I just come in with the comments then, and I probably won't need to comment again then. I'm not happy about the obscured glazing in bedrooms. I think that it's that's obviously done to get through design and planning, and not really considering the people having to live in those properties. So I've never been happy with that. I would question the second homes. I know that the inspector said that she was not sure about replacements, but this is suggesting demolishing 1 and building 2. So yes, I think it's probably confusing, but I think as a planning committee member, I would ask for that to be conditioned, that if it were to get permission, that we did still put the second homes restriction on it. I have got concerns about the fact that it is an area of distinctive local character in the Swanage local plan, and it's in the AONB, so the density in this particular area bothers me. And I think also because we're in a new council and working towards things, I think it's incumbent on us as planning members to approve things that we feel are right, even if the policies are not quite there yet. And we do have a corporate plan that has been approved, and that talks about affordable, suitable and decent housing. And I'm not entirely sure that these two that are crammed into one plot with the very, very small amounts of garden and parking, I just don't feel that this is right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cherry. Liz, did you wish to come back on any of those comments?
Members, if I can, Kim Cowell here. I'd like to come back on the second homes policy. Your offices sought clarification with the policy team with regard to the weight that we could give the emerging H14 policy, and the advice was very clear that because we, like Councillor Brooks, questioned the wording of replacement and the inspector's conclusions, and we were advised by the policy team quite clearly that the local plan policy is not in a stage where we can apply that policy because of the questions the inspector raised about the replacement dwelling aspect of that policy. So your officer's advice is that you can't put that condition on. It wouldn't be sound to do so. Thank you.
Liz, is there anything else you want to add? And then Sherry wants to come back.
Only to say that with regards to the windows, those windows that are to be obscure glazed are in rooms which are also served by non-obscure glazed windows. So there will be outlook for the occupants. Thank you.
Thank you. Cherry, you wish to come back?
Yes, I do. It's about this second homes policy again. I'm a little bit concerned because we had a challenge to the second homes policy after I think it was to do with Lulworth a couple of committees back, and we decided that we would stand our ground because we firmly believed that this is what we ought to be doing in our area. And I think if we take a different approach now, we'll get people coming back, and you know, we'll open the floodgates for people wanting to appeal again. And I really think, as councillors, we made the decision that we wanted a second homes policy, and precisely for this reason. We do not want people coming in and buying brand new houses that are very expensive, and then, you know, only coming down at weekends or whatever. And I just don't. I still think I would say, and it's difficult to go against a recommendation of an officer, I know, but I think as council, ward members and planning committee members, we've got a responsibility to try and maintain the standard of no second homes policy.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to make a proposal at this point, Cherry?
Yes. I propose that that we reject this application. I think on the basis of there's not enough difference in amendments to the previous refusal. It is too dense in the area of distinctive local character in the AONB, and it doesn't fit with our corporate planning of affordable, suitable and decent housing. And the second homes bit I want in there as well.
Liz, are you happy with that in planning terms?
I'm struggling a little bit with the second homes. What would the reason for refusal be on that?
Okay, if it's a refusal, sorry, we don't need to go down the road of the second homes, do we? It's only if it gets to be approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a proposal for refusal. My next speaker is Robin Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. I think one of the words that people have been looking for here maybe is contrived, but I can see why this has been finally balanced, the officer's recommendation. And in the context of site visits, I must say, I think we've had a very, very good presentation here, which sets it out extremely clearly. So thank the officers for that. Is there anybody from Highways on the meeting, please? Because I have a question about Highways.
You go, Liz.
Sorry, I was going to say we don't have a Highways member today, but hopefully we can answer your question.
I'll try. I'll ask the question anyway. My concern is particularly, well, I have a number of concerns. The main concern here is around the parking on site. Tandem parking is always fun. It means constant juggling of vehicles, because the one you want is always the one that's on the inside. Trust me, I've got a family who have that situation. Now, I know what the National Highways Code says about reversing onto a main road, but on the basis that I think majority of people will drive into these and will then reverse out onto Battlemead, and I note that it's very near a corner. And I'd be interested to hear the Highways judgment on this, because there is probably going to be more vehicle movements than perhaps there normally would be, where you've got to drive in and out from the garage, because I assume there's no turning space in front of those houses. So I would appreciate a comment or an answer on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. So it's proposed to impose a condition at condition five, which was to do with landscaping, and the intention is that there's currently a very low level wall which allows visibility, to adequate visibility to serve the new driveways and accesses. people reversing onto the highway in these circumstances obviously not unusual. The council's highway officer has considered the site and has been to the site and checked it and is satisfied that it would not lead to undue danger, and that because all the parking is on the opposite side of the highway, there is in fact better visibility on this side of the road. So whilst it's appreciated that tandem parking can, as you say, cause additional vehicle movements, it's not anticipated that this would cause harm in this case.
Okay, are you happy with that comment, Robin?
Well, I'm not really happy with it, to be honest with you, Chairman. I think it's his view and he's the highways expert, but I can see in practice, I can see issues arising from that, because I used the word right at the beginning of my question, is because this is a contrived layout, I think. And, you know, there was a comment in some of the objections about cramped and lack of garden space. Sadly, whilst I support those views, I think any new build we get in the 21st century now is not going to have acres of garden space or outdoor space. We have to look at higher densities. That's what the MPPF is saying to us. So sadly, that is it. But the thing about the overlooking here and the contrived arrangement of the windows and the obscure, I think it's just, it doesn't work. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. My next speaker is Alex Brenton, please.
Hi. Thank you, Chairman. I actually have decided, I wasn't sure before we started this, but having gone through looking at the street scene, looking at the overall map, I am with Councillor Brooks in that I would second refusal of this application on the grounds that the whole plan of the two houses is contrived to pack in. I understand about having to get, you know, higher density properties, but this will change the attitude, the aspect of this road, even though, you know, the street, the plans make it look as though the houses will be nice from the front. Having parked virtually outside this house, the other side of the road, several times when going to the beach, I know that there is an atmosphere in this road and these houses will be tight. The parking issue that Councillor Cook has come up with is very true. Cars reversing out onto that road as other cars are trying to park opposite, there will be congestion there. Certainly the business of, if you need to have obscured glass in a bedroom, it means that bedroom is too close to something else that shouldn't be there, even if it is only a secondary window. And actually, it isn't a secondary window. It would be the bigger one and the one with the views. So you are blocking a view out of a house. People will come and buy this house because they want to live in that part of Swanage, and that part of Swanage is renowned for its slightly open atmosphere and views. So overall, there's several things that add up to me as this is not a suitable application. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Liz to respond to some of the points that you've made, and then I'm going to come back to you for some clarification on your seconding of the proposal, because you've added some bits in. So we'll get the response back from Liz first, then I'll come back to you, and then if you still wish to go ahead with that, the other comments, then I'll go back to Cherry and see if she will accept them. Okay, so Liz, do you want to respond to the comments from Alex, please?
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor is correct in terms of the bedroom 3 of the proposal, which is the one that the developer suggested be obscure glazed, and yes, that is the principal bedroom window, and that's why in my presentation I explained that as officers we wouldn't recommend that a condition would be placed on that window, because we would anticipate that were it not obscure glazed, the impact would not be demonstrably harmful. So it is slightly odd situation where the developer is suggesting more obscure glazing than we think is strictly necessary, but he has done that on the basis that he wishes to ameliorate neighbour concerns. In terms of whether obscure glazing always means that things are too cramped. It's on a case-by-case basis, isn't it? And it's about looking at, is a second window in this bedroom strictly necessary? Well, no, it isn't. It's got a good outlook out the front, but a second window will provide additional light, which will benefit the future occupier. And the fact that it's obscure glazed may be considered by some to be oppressive, but I think in this case, given the size of it, I wouldn't consider that in itself is going to be harmful. I think otherwise I'll be just repeating myself unless there's anything specific you'd like me to respond to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Liz. Alex, I'm coming back to you now.
Am I still on? I would. My response is that, we are talking about views and we're talking about desirability of houses. If people buy houses where they spend all their time having arguments with the neighbours about who's looking over the back garden, I think we're just creating problems. So that's my reason why I'm not happy on that one. In terms of reasons for refusal, I would have said reasons for refusal are cramped, not suitable for the situation, for the neighbourhood neighbourhood plan. It's not a neighbourhood plan, neighbourhood landscape district. I haven't got the words in front of me here. And certainly the parking and road access in an area which is always a bit of a bottleneck for parking during 9 months of the year. I think they are the major reasons. Pardon. They're the major reasons I'm objecting. It's unsuitable for the neighbourhood.
Okay, thank you. I think you have to be very careful with your definition of view, because the right to a view is not a planning consideration. However, overlooking is. So you've got to be very careful on the distinction and the use of your words there. Okay. I think I'm just going to double check with Liz again on the comments about the parking and access, please. You're muted, Liz.
Sorry about that. I can only really refer you back to the paragraphs in the officer report where I'm trying to find it now. Forgive me, I had it just now. So the plans to provide off-roading parking space for 2 vehicles serving the new dwellings is in line with the Dorset parking guidance, which advises 2 spaces for a 3-bedroom dwelling. Given the location of the site with on-road car parking bays, to require a further visitor space would not be considered necessary, and so the site layout is considered sufficient. And as I say, the highway officer actually visited the site this morning to double check, and he has confirmed to me that he is satisfied that the arrangement would not result in highway danger. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in light of that information, Alex, do you still wish to consider parking and access?
Because of the area where summer parking is such an issue all the time, yes, I do think it is relevant.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to go back to Cherry Brooks, who has proposed refusal. Alex has added some extra wording to your proposal, talking about cramped design and contrived design, and also the parking and access. Do you wish to add those to your proposal, please?
I agree with the concerns over the parking, but one thing I've learned on planning committees is that you don't put in too much stuff for an objection, because it widens the scope for somebody to come back against it. And I think because the officer has said that it's within the rules, if you like, for safety, and it doesn't pose a danger, which is obviously what he has to work to. I think I'd rather leave the parking bit out, although I do agree with it. The cramped design can, yeah, I've already said about density and cramming 2 properties into a smaller space.
Okay, that's lovely, thank you. I'm going to move on to, so just to confirm before I move on, that the current recommendation, which is seconded, is for refusal with issues over cramped and dense design, contrived design, not meeting the corporate plan for suitable housing, and also the second homes policy.
No, we were not going to put the second homes policy in that refusal, but the other thing was the it's not it doesn't fit within the area of distinctive local character appraisal.
Thank you for that. You can see why it's important that we get it right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm now going to move on to our next speaker, which is John Worth.
Sorry, just trying to get off mute. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think most of the things I were going to talk about have already been expressed by Councillor Brooks and Councillor Brenton, so I won't add any more to that. I'll just carry on listening.
That's fine, thank you. My next speaker is Beryl Ezard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I would like to ask some questions of the planning officer. The AONB, unfortunately, I can't remember what the AONB response was to this, because several people have mentioned about the AONB it being in that area. What was the response? Can you remind us about that? And also about the building line. It is actually not in line with the other properties in that street, even the new one. It does, you know, it does kind of come forward a bit more. So it's I would say, you know, it shouldn't be sticking out quite that far. It's not really in line with the building line of everything else. So I think that makes it look awkward. I certainly agree that it's being cramped and the density is rather high. And what I am really worried about is that to encourage this amount of density in this area, Battlemead and Demowlam Road, and being so near the beach, one thing about the parking, but this will set a precedent for other densities coming along by other people in that road. And I think this is a bad move to actually think about allowing 2 dwellings on a site where there's usually 1, when you know, there has been so much opposition to it, and actually we have got reasons to object to it. So could I ask for the AONB response, please?
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, thank you, Councillor. I don't believe that the AONB were notified on this application because it's not a major application and it's within the settlement, and so the assessment has been done by the officer and it's not considered that harm to the AONB would result from this development, which is on previously developed land and follows existing settlement structure, if not detail, in terms of it's following the it's facing onto the highway in the same manner as other dwellings in this area. In terms of the building line, I've just popped up the slide again. So the existing dwelling the new existing dwelling is the 3 metres to the boundary here, and the proposed is 3 metres to the boundary here, which then steps back to about 3.7 and then steps back again to 4.7, and the existing building line for the most of the remainder of Battlemead there is about 9 metres. So this 3 metres is equivalent to the current 1A Battlemead chalet. In terms of precedent, can only comment that obviously we look at each application on its merits.
Does that answer your questions, Beryl?
Can I come back and say yes? I'm really not happy that actually the AONB were not actually consulted and didn't have a say here, because obviously it's so important that the AONB are consulted and that's taken on board without it just being a blanket thing. And I do feel that sometimes this overlooked, and I think that would help in actually keeping Swanage and a nice balanced and characterful place, because with this happening, this is going to actually start a slippery slope where other people are going to think, oh well, we can squeeze 2 houses in the space where 1 is at the moment, and I think that is really a bad move. But I know it's on its own precedent, and actually looking at the houses, if they were in bigger spaces, yes, they look very nice, but I think they are cramped, and I would back what Cherry has said and also what Alex has said about the parking, especially where you're really, when you've got lots and lots of tourists in the summer, it is absolutely crammed packed with parking, and it is dangerous around that area. So well, that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beryl. I'm going to move on to our next speaker. David Took, you wanted to come back. Sorry, it's taken a while.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, that's all right. A couple of things. I said I wanted to speak to support Cherry on the second homes principle. We did have this discussion a few meetings back, and we decided to give it weight. And I would support that. But looking at that and listening to the debate as it's moved on, in terms of being cramped, what we have here, in fact, is 3 new dwellings to replace 1. Now, one of those dwellings has already gone in, and I appreciate that's a separate application. But what we're effectively doing is replacing the current chalet bungalow with 3 houses, and 2 of which are now very cramped and, I think the word been used before, contrived to fit in. And I'm starting to come down on the side of rejecting this application for that reason, mostly. But if we do decide to grant permission, then I would urge us to consider giving weight to the second homes policy that is in process. Thank you.
Thank you. As regards the second homes, I think in this particular case, it's one of the finer nuances that need to be teased out, because we have got replacement dwellings as opposed to new dwellings, as we've dealt with previously. So I think we have a waiting brief on that, and let's hope we get some more clarification from the inspector soon. As regards your 3-for-1 comment, obviously, as you're aware, we have to deal with the application before us, but I would ask you to point me to the policy that you're referring to about subdivision and number of properties.
I wasn't referring particularly to a policy on subdivision and number of properties, but we were talking about, in terms of second homes, then a 3-for-1 replacement is relevant, I believe. In terms of it being cramped, the fact that we're now squeezing 3 properties onto what was the plot of 1 property is relevant for cramping, in my belief. Is that?
Thank you. I will get some officer clarification on that for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim Cowell here. I've jumped in, Liz, sorry. I think that in terms of your local plan policies and in terms of the national planning policy guidance about making effective use of land, you'll see that in paragraph 117 of the NPPF, it says that planning policies and decisions should promote an effective use of land in meeting the need for homes and other uses, while safeguarding and improving the environment and ensuring safe and healthy living conditions. So if members are minded to refuse the application, clearly in terms of that increased density in the comments that Councillor Brooks made earlier, then policy 117, whilst it talks about making effective use of land, is also relevant to the character of the development that we're delivering. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that provides you with the clarity you required, David. I'm going to move on now. My next speaker is Shane Bartlett, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, it's been quite a thorough debate so far, and I'd like to commend the officer for the report that she gave us. She's already had recommendations on it already, and it was a very good report. I'm always minded to, when we come into one of these debates, is to listen intently with the ward member, with the local and town council, because they know their area best. And I came to this debate struggling to find a material planning consideration that I thought would carry sufficient weight that I could refuse this. I was quite interested to listen to the debate to see what the members had. And I'm really still of the same mind that I still haven't found or heard a sufficient material consideration to warrant refusal of this in my own mind. When we look at the streetscape, I mean, there was a very good slide. I'm sorry, Liz, but I didn't take a note of the numbers of the slides. You had a slide where it showed the streetscape that you've got there now as compared to the one that is present. That's it. Thank you. Now, while this is subjective, my own personal view is that chalet bungalow is the most ugliest thing I've seen in a long, long time. And I think what is proposed enhances that area for me. Now, I know that there's talk about the amount of land that there is on these individual plots within this particular area of Swanage, and I fully appreciate that. And I think at the time that was obviously the aspiration. I'm not aware that Swanage has a significant amount of development land. It's constrained by being on the coastline with the sea. It's constrained with there being an area of AONB. And I think that in terms of the NPPF document, that there is the ability to divide plots of land to create additional dwellings on them. And it's not something that we particularly like. It can be it can be perceived to be a ruination of an area, but I think stood on the street, I think that gives a far better street view than what is presently exists. The proposed one, I think, gives a far better view of that. In terms of the land associated with those individual dwellings, I don't think there's any demonstrable harm from standing on the street and looking at it. The only way you would know that they had smaller back gardens would be if you went on Google Earth and looked at it. So that's my view on the street scene and what I think about that. In terms of the overlooking and the issues about the obscure glazing, I don't see any need for obscure glazing in the second bedroom. I think that the fact that the original chalet bungalow had a room in the roof with a very large dormer window that overlooked the rear areas and the other gardens on the neighbouring properties, I think that's perfectly permissible. I don't see that there's an issue there, and I wouldn't say that there needs to be a planning condition in terms of obscure glazing, and I know that the officer isn't insisting on that. I also think in terms of the street line, when you look at the surrounding streets and Battlemead itself, there isn't a uniform build line. It does tend to be a little bit mixed, and the proposed development, the first building is in line with where the chalet bungalow was anyway, and then it steps back slightly and then steps back again to number 1. So I don't think that that has a demonstrable harmful impact on the streets either. It's a mute point as to whether the rooms are big enough within the houses, but we have this time and time again, and it will have adhered to building standards. So the discussion about the policy, and I know we're not going to put that into about policy H14, it is disappointing that we're not able to ensure that these can't be second homes or holiday homes. I would have loved to have had that. I know we're not going to actually put that into any recommendation that comes forward on this one. But for me personally, with the plan applications that are coming in from Purbeck, the sooner that we can get that approved so that we can give some weight to that policy, the far happier I would be. Because as I've said, part of my reasoning on this is that I think Swanage needs housing. I think you need to keep young families there, those with the historical background there. And if we're not building the housing in these urban environments, it becomes all the more difficult to actually enable those people to stay where they were born, where their roots were. So, as I say, on the face of it, Madam Chairman, while I think it was an aspiration in this particular part of the town to create these houses on these large plots, I think in modern times, I don't think that aspiration can be met for the reasons that I've given. I think that if the planning, and I appreciate this could set a precedent, or in some people's minds it could set a precedent, but I think on reflection in looking at that street scene, I don't think it has a demonstrable harm to that area. I think it does improve that area. And the proposal that's been put forward, Madam Chairman, I'm afraid I won't be able to support it. The refusal of the application. I still do not find any material consideration as to why this should be refused. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I have 3 speakers who have already spoken. Providing you keep it short, I will allow you to come back for another bite, but I think after that I will close the debate and move to the vote. So Alex Brenton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose my biggest query is we are not taking responsibility on, we're not adopting some of the plans and some of the policies that are emerging, but we already have in place, or Swanage has in place. It's what I've just found the name, Townscape Character and Development Local Plan, and that has been, published and discussed according to Cherry, I think 2017. Surely this is a relevant matter to consider. What weight do we give to local plans, whether they're town plans, neighbourhood plans, townscape plans? It seems odd that we are encouraging small places to go to the effort to do this, and then we just ignore them. Thank you
for that. I'm going to get all 3 comments and then I'll go back to the officers for one last response. So my next speaker is Beryl Izzard, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, this thing about actually constitutes really about plot sizes, and this originally was just that one bungalow on which really went right up to the corner. So you are effectively, as Councillor Took said, now got 3 dwellings on one plot. That was the original house. And actually I noticed, I remember in the Purbeck District Council local plan, we did have in place something about landlords or actually having a plot and then dividing it into separate planning applications, and actually that was actually put in as a consideration when and if they put in another application for part of the same plot, that actually the original one was taken into account. So actually when you're saying this is a separate planning application, okay, yes, it's a separate planning application, but it's actually only just finished that first house on what was part of the plot. So that is obviously owned by the same person, and they've just split it into two, or now into three. And I think that actually should have some weight, because I understand that if you look back in the old, and it stands, the Purbeck District Council local plan does stand still, that there is something in there, there is a clause in there that if they divide it up, the whole thing should be taken into account and not just the current planning application. Can I have some clarification on that, please?
Yes, of course, I'll get that for you. Considering that Cherry Brooks also wants to ask a question about weight of evidence, I will ask her to confirm what she's looking for, and then I will ask Kim Cowell to respond to all three comments, please. Cherry.
Hello. What I wanted to say about weight of evidence is we haven't actually discussed very much in this debate the Swanage local plan, which was adopted in 2017, and where I said that the distinctive local character, that I felt it wasn't fitting in with there, I would on my objection, I would like to say as part of the adopted Swanage local plan, so that it makes it very clear that the local people have been included in this debate, if you like.
Okay, thank you. As that's a clarification rather than an addition,
yeah.
I think we'll just take that as read without needing to go back to the seconder. So, Kim, we've had comments on the weight needed to be given to the townscape plan, the Swanage local plan, and previous Purbeck policy about subdivision of plots. Can you come back on those, please?
Councillor Coombs, I'm so sorry. Could I? It's Liz Adams. May I respond just to save Kim, because she may not have the subdivision policy in front of her. Just to step in with that one first. That one is in relation to when we're calculating affordable housing. So it's really important that developers don't subdivide plots and try and get incremental development, which then as a whole would require affordable housing. That isn't the case in this situation, but that is, as has been identified, it can be an issue.
Thank you for that one.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Chairman. Kim Cowell here. If it assists members, I'll draw your attention to paragraph 7 of the officer report, and you'll see that that is the starting point for officers in considering this application, because it's the last reason for refusal, and the proposal before you has been weighed against the previous reasons for refusal. Several councillors have referred to the policies that we have that we apply to consideration, and you will see if it may assist you in forming your reasons for refusal and what policies you'd like to have in the recommended reason for refusal. You'll see at the end of paragraph 7, it identifies there all the local plan policies that were listed as part of that previous reason for refusal, and the Swanage local plan and the townscape character and development, the design guidance, were all listed as part of that reason for refusal. We've also mentioned 117 of the NPPF. So if it assists members with the reason for refusal that's been put forward, the previous reason did list all of those. You'll also see at paragraph 15.8 in the officer report that the officer assessment analysis did have regard to the Swanage townscape character appraisal, and that's set out in paragraphs 15.10 and 15.11. And I just hope that and then the same analysis includes references to those policies in more detail. I hope that assists the members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. So it's clear that the housing subdivision is not appropriate in this case because of there is no affordable housing provision. And the Townscape plan and the Swanage local plan have been taken into consideration by officers, and it is a member decision then as to whether they agree that officers have given sufficient weight to that following the debate. So we have a proposal which has been seconded to refuse, and if I've got it right, it's about cramped and contrived design leading to dense development, and does not meet the corporate plan about suitable housing and local character. Have I summed that up appropriately, or have I missed something, please?
Chairman, Dave North over here. Is the issue of the obscured glazing and the overlooking part of the refusal too?
It wasn't mentioned by the proposer or seconder.
Thank you.
Chairman, I thought it was mentioned by Councillor Brenton. I may be wrong.
It was.
Councillor Brenton here. Yes, I did mention that the fact that obscure windows are offered means that there is going to be an issue of overlooking, even if they aren't insisted on by the planning officers. But
yeah. Well,
I would certainly
through the
go
chair,
for,
please.
Sorry, Chair.
There is a 3 metre overlooking, isn't there? One of the windows looks out onto, if I've got it right, looks out onto 3 metres away to the next dwelling.
Yeah.
Right, we've already been through the distances, and slide 18 is on the screen at the moment, showing the relevant distances from the main bedroom window that is obscure glazed, rather than a secondary one which is just giving light at the front of the property, and there are quite considerable distances there. So I'm going to move to the vote now. It has been proposed and seconded for refusal, and I'm going to go.
Chair, sorry to interrupt you. It's Liz Adams here. Would you like me to read out a draft reason for refusal?
I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
This is what I've got. Forgive me if I've missed something. The proposed increase in development density would result in a cramped scheme which fails to sensitively integrate with the low density of the existing estate and the prevailing setting provided by established building lines. The bulk of the 2 dwellings would negatively impact on the spacious suburban distinctive character area. The internal layout and obscured glazing is contrived, and the proposal does not achieve affordable, suitable and decent housing, contrary to, and then I've listed the same policies as were in the previous refusal. Thank you.
I don't think we could have said that better. Cherry and Alex, are you happy with that wording?
I'm very happy with that, thank you.
I am happy with that wording, very nicely put.
The skill, eh? Right, I'm now going to go through the roll call of members then, please. You are required to confirm that you have listened to the entire presentation and debate, and then cast your vote, please. So, Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've listened to the entire debate and have understood the presentation, and I'm voting against.
Thank you. Alex Brenton.
I have been here and listened to all the debate, and I am voting for rejection.
Cherry Brooks.
Thank you. I have listened to the debate and understood the presentations, and I am voting for rejection.
Thank you. Robin Cook.
Yes, Chairman, I've listened to the whole debate and understood it. Thank you very clearly, and support refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Dyer.
I've listened to the entire debate and I'm voting against.
Thank you very much. Beryl Ezard.
I've listened to the whole debate and taken part in it, and I actually am for the refusal.
Thank you. Mike Dyer, can I just come back to you a moment, please, because you've said you're voting against. Are you voting for refusal or are you voting against the proposal to refuse?
I'm voting against the proposal to refuse.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, next one is Barry Gorringe.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to all the details of the application. I've listened thoroughly to the debate. It is finely balanced, this, but I am voting against refusal. Thank you.
David Morgan.
Thank you, Chairman. I have listened to the debate quite thoroughly and I am voting against the proposal.
Okay, thank you. David Took.
Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, just before Dave Northover, just before Mr. Took speaks, Councillor Morgan says he's voting against the proposals. Now,
The proposal is to refuse.
Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Morgan is voting against that.
Yeah.
I'm voting against the proposal to refuse.
Thank you for your confirmation.
Thank you. Can we be very clear for the remaining members, please, that you are voting to support or reject a proposal to refuse planning consent? David Took.
Thank you, Chairman. I confirm that I have listened with great interest to this debate and I am voting in favour of refusal.
Thank you. Bill Trite has a predetermined position, so will not be taking part. And final then is John Worth.
I confirm I've listened to the whole of the discussion and I'm voting against the proposal to reject.
Okay, feels a pretty close call to me. David Northover, can you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
I can, Chairman. The outcome of the vote is that 6 members were for the refusal and 4 members were against the refusal. So the application is refused by 6 votes to 4.
Right, now, can I just double check, because I have voting against the proposal on my list: Shane Bartlett.
Correct.
Mike Dyer.
Correct.
Barry Gorringe.
I had Councillor Gorringe voting for, you see. Can you confirm, please?
Barry, did you vote to refuse the application?
To refuse the application.
That was your vote, yes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
To refuse the application. So that is another one for the refusal, yes?
To refuse what has been proposed by Cherry Brooks.
Thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. So might I say that has changed my calculations. In fact, 4 members, sorry, I'll start again. We'll be very clear on this. 5 members have voted to refuse. They are Councillor Brenton, Brooks, Cook, Ezard and Took, and 5 members have voted not to refuse the application. They're Councillors Bartlett, Dyer, Gorringe, Morgan and Worth. So that is 5 all.
Okay, can I just double check from all members? Please say if we have got your voting wrong. Okay, so it is down to Chairman's casting votes. Okay, on this occasion, I'm actually going to go with the proposal for refusal. My personal view is that I find it is contrived, particularly around the location of the windows in both of the replacement properties, looking at the screen, the rear left-hand bedroom windows, a corner window and an obscure glazed window. So I support the reasons given for refusal. So therefore, the application falls. Thank you. I'm now going to move on to the last item on our agenda, which is urgent items. Members, you'll be pleased to know that we don't have any. So can I thank everybody for their contribution today. There's been some chewy bits to deal with, but I hope that we have made a clear argument and we move on. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you all again in August.